2024 laid the foundation for a brand new Vandy.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in on this last day of 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So as 2025 is knocking on the door, we reflect on the year that was 2024, how it possibly could have laid the foundation for what could be a brand new Vandy. Yeah, you heard that right. Brand new Vandy. So here's why it's a pivotal year. Here's why it's a foundational year, because I think on the offset, as we go cruising into this NIL era of college sports, I think Vandy has finally realized that they need to participate, and by doing so, I think they have found that they can attract some pretty good athletes, and they can attract some pretty good attention to the university, and they can provide plenty of opportunities, being in one of the fastest growing cities in all of America. So this is an exciting time, because what Vandy used to be, except for the sport of baseball, Vandy used to just be a circled win. And what that means is every time a coach would get their schedule, they'd go to the calendar. They go, okay, all right, we're going to go and circle our wins here. Okay, we got Coastal Carolina win. Okay, we've got Kent State win. Okay, now let's go to the conference games. Okay, Mississippi State win, Vandy win. That when they're counting their wins and losses and trying to predict, Vandy is always counted as a win for the other teams, right? And very rarely does Vandy get that benefit of the doubt of, hey, they might actually do something. And even last year, it was crazy of me to say that Vandy was going to go to a bowl game. I know I caught some flack for that. I know that a lot of people thought I was crazy, and people were like, dude, you're nuts. I love your optimism, but you're nuts, man. And guess what? It came to fruition. And like I said, it laid the foundation. It ended up laying the foundation to what now could possibly be a program-changing season for the Vanderbilt Commodores, because they're not, in other years where it's been like a fluke year and things like that, I think they didn't have the same resources they do this year. They don't have the NIL. They don't have the transfer portal thing. They don't have – it's more of an open market with coaches. It's more of an attractive, place now because of what's around Vandy. So a lot of things have changed in favor of Vandy to allow them as a university and as an athletic department, not only for football, but for basketball and now baseball. They've allowed the opportunity for there to be a little bit of attractiveness to these programs. And it's not just, oh, well, you couldn't hack it at Indiana State. Well, come on over to Vandy, and we'll get you a spot here. We'll take anybody that we can get. Or, hey, I know you just got offered by Valdosta State. Well, why don't you come to Vandy? And that's your only other offer. I think those days for Vandy are going to be fewer and far between, because I think you're starting to become a little bit more of a high profile program. And that's thanks in part to a series of moves for football that Clark Lea did that set in motion where we sit right now. And then also a same series of moves in basketball that got us to this point to where we are right now. Baseball, I think, is starting to come around on the NIL thing. Tim Corbin, I think, is getting used to the fact that NIL is important and the transfer portal is important. So I think they're getting used to that too. But Vandy baseball's, it's kind of a machine. The conference is getting better around them, which makes it a little bit tougher, but they're a machine, and they're always competitive, and they're always up there competing with the tops of the Southeastern Conference. So starting with football, though, okay, so the first domino, Clark Lea takes over the defense. That's probably one of the best moves that happened, because I think the first thing he realized was, hey, something's got to change here defensively. Something's got to give here, because I am not getting the results that we need. All right, we went 2-10. We couldn't stop a nosebleed. We couldn't move the ball an inch offensively. So the first thing that's got to go, or it's going to be me next, is I've got to get rid of the coordinators. And if I'm going to go, and Clark Lea probably said to himself, he probably had this inner dialogue when he made his first move, which was firing defense coordinator, and ended up taking over himself. This inner dialogue probably happened. Clark Lea was like, you know what? This is inside his head. He's probably, I don't know if he, I don't know what he does to kind of cope with stress or whatever, but whatever that is, he was probably thinking, doing some self-talk, trying to figure out what direction do I go at defensive coordinator. And being a defensive genius himself, the reason why he's sitting in the head coaching chair right now at Vanderbilt is because he built elite defenses at Notre Dame, and he helped architect elite defenses wherever he's been. So he's a well-respected defensive mind, and he was headed towards being somebody's, the path that everyone thought was going to happen was that Clark Lea was going to play out the string for 2024, go 3-9, 2-10, get fired, and end up on somebody's staff as a defensive coordinator, and that program was going to thrive, right? That was the sentiment. But Clark Lea's like, you know what? I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to take over the defense. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down calling the shots defensively. I'm going to have to figure it out about how to be a head coach and a defensive coordinator, because being a head coach and a defensive coordinator is very, very difficult. It's easier for offense because you can dictate what you want to do play calling wise, and it doesn't take as much work. Well, offensive coordinating is a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't take as much like attention to detail, figuring out tendencies and things like that. Offensively, if you're, it's easier to be the head coach and call plays because you're dictating to the defense what you want them to do, and you're reacting to bigger, more broad concepts. So defensively, it's difficult because you have to figure out the nuances of, or is he lined up here, or is he lined up on the ball? How far away from, how far are their splits? What are they doing situationally, down and distance wise? Defenses typically play to what you see on film, but offenses will typically give you all the wrinkles. So that's why it makes it more difficult. So he had to kind of figure out that balance. And one of the things he did in result of that is, when he went on the offensive side of the ball, he's like, first of all, I've got to hire an offensive coordinator that can have full autonomy and that can handle his side of the ball. I don't have to manage it. I don't have to micromanage it. I think he got into a point where he had to kind of sit on top of the program and not be involved like he wants to be. And that's kind of what made everything go to waste in 2023. And so, he made that move as well. He hired Tim Beck, and then Jerry Kill retired, stepped away from New Mexico due to health problems. He needed a home. Tim Beck said, hey, you know what? Hey, I need some help here. And Clark might need some help and might need some mentoring as a head coach, as he's trying to be a coordinator and a head coach. Maybe you should come. In steps Jerry Kill. So this whole string of events happened between, like, I guess December 1st, December 2nd, somewhere in that range, somewhere shortly after the Tennessee game, all the way up till like the week after New Year's. They had Tim Beck in place, and Clark Lea had already implanted himself as defense coordinator. So this, again, that move was the most, those two moves were the most pivotal moves, because as in comes Pavia. Now, we all know what Pavia brings, right? We all know that the Jerry Kill, Tim Beck, Diego Pavia trio, we all know what impact that had. And I've talked about it all year long. Diego Pavia becomes the heart and soul of this team. And next thing you know, there's a new culture that's born. And amidst all of that, you get a new strength and conditioning program. Well, and I'm talking pivotal moments here for the program. I'm talking about how the culture shifted with just a few simple moves. Like, you're thinking, okay, Clark Lea's going to take over defense. Not much is going to change. Well, a lot has changed. Attention to detail, guys believing, guys playing fast and aggressive, having an identity, I think really helps with culture, because if you have an identity, you play to the identity, you don't play to your opponent. And that's kind of one of those culture driving things. That is a foundational move. And I'm going to talk a little bit more foundational moves here next, how strength and conditioning really affected the culture of the program and how it's going to affect it from this point and beyond. I'll talk about it next. Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. So for me, the best feature is the subscription tracker. I use it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton, man. It's amazing. So they have this goals feature also, and you've been able to automatically set aside for my future, and no more stressing about budgeting every month like that. That's a big weight lifted off my shoulders. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go there. Do it. Also, speaking of things that you won't regret, the joint chiropractic, if you want to feel good, if you want to get yourself back in alignment, if you're having some health issues, things that with your nervous system, or whatever the case may be, the joint chiropractor will get you right. They have customized plans. They sit down, they meet with you every time you go in and say, hey, what's new? Is there anything else bothering you? Is there anything different that we need to do? Or, do we need to just continue the plan that we set forth on your first visit? And then depending on what you say, they go to work, and they're fast and efficient too. They have over 900 locations nationwide. So it makes it easy to find one. So like if I go out of town, I have this little like keychain thing. If I go out of town, I can just scan that little key card and, like let's say I'm in Charlotte. And I need to go get cracked. I just find the joint there nearest to me where I'm at in Charlotte. Go boop, hit the little scanner, and it's fast and easy. So it makes you feel good. I literally float out of there every time I go. So it's definitely well worth it. They have a lot of plans. Again, 900 locations makes it easier, makes it easy to find, and makes it easier to go to. So the excuses are gone. So make sure you go and visit the Joint Chiropractic and make it happen for you today. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. And I hope you ring in. And if you're not with me, I hope you ring in the new year and ring in 2025 with clicking that subscribe button right here on YouTube and finding me wherever you find your podcast. So thanks for making me your first listen. If indeed you're an everydayer, I have nothing but love for you, nothing but respect. Major shout outs, and make sure you tell a friend, and then have them tell a friend, and then have them tell two friends. And next thing you know, I'm at 10,000 subscribers, and here we go. So make sure you spread the word. If you need a second listen, Locked On SEC, you can find me on the squad shows once a week. I participate most of the time. So that's a lot of fun. We get together with all the SEC hosts like Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss, Clint Shamlin, Locked On Bulldogs, Brandon Olson, Locked On Gators, John Neighbors, Locked On Arkansas, Zach Blackerby, Locked On Auburn. It's all hosted by Chris Gordy. Does a phenomenal job there. So make sure you make that your second listen. But we're reviewing 2024. We're talking about pivotal foundational moments in 2024 that's going to set forth a brand new Vandy. Okay. And I say it like that because it is a brand new Vandy. It's not the same old Vandy, right? And the pivotal moments that cause that. It's the ripple effect that caused that. And there's a lot of things that set that forth in motion. Like Clark Lea taking over the defense brings a whole new confidence to this program of guys going, hey, this guy knows what he's doing defensively. He's calling the shots. I'm in. CJ Taylor was bound for the transfer portal. Langston Patterson probably the same. They were like, nah, you don't. If you bring another coordinator, I don't think they ever said that, but I promise with the mass exodus, they were thinking it. I can tell you that much. And if they say they weren't, they're lying. But Clark Lea is like, I'm taking over the defense. And CJ Taylor and Langston Patterson were like, that's all I need to hear. And even Dericky Wright finally came around. It took him a minute. It took him hitting the portal and committing to Texas A&M and never actually going. And for him to believe in Clark Lea, I think it's going to pay dividends for his football career as well. So those pivotal moments, like bringing in Diego Pavia, the heart and soul of the program, bringing in Jerry Kill, Tim Beck with a unique identity offensively that kind of made Vandy stand out. And then Jerry Kill is kind of like the program binder. He's kind of like the guy that helped Clark Lea be Clark Lea and be the head coach at the same time. And I think having that extra head coach presence as somebody that you know is a winner to bounce ideas off of, to kind of like take over as a substitute head coach when you needed to go do defensive coordinator duties. Like, let's say you needed to have a big talk with your defensive unit on the sideline. Jerry Kill could take over and be the head coach for a minute and allow Clark Lea to do his thing. So that was pivotal as well. I think that helped bridge the gap there. As far as being able to have this program being fired on all cylinders. So Diego Pavia, the heart and soul, I think a lot of the energy fed off of him. And I'm excited for him to be here for a full offseason cycle now and have that energy just kind of permeate through the program, permeate through the university for a full calendar year. Just think about what could possibly happen. I mean, it's like I said, chain reaction, man. And it's a chain reaction for the good for Vandy, because for 10 years, over 10 years, since 2013, Vandy has not had a winning season. They have not won a bowl game. They've had some, they've had some ups. They've had a lot of downs, and it's just one of those moments where it's like, and Vandy's been one of those programs that in the old recruiting model, it's just been tough because there is a smaller university. It's tougher to get into. It's not quite as prestigious athletically. And it's just one of those things where they struggled recruiting against the big boys like Alabama and Georgia and Auburn and Florida, Tennessee. They struggled recruiting against those guys. Well, now with NIL and the way Nashville is as a destination, they have been able to bridge that gap. Now, what helps is now when the guys get into the program, they're not just here and just like, okay, well, you're here. Here's your money. I'll go do your thing, right? They get into a really good strength and conditioning program. And for Vandy, they hired Coach Robert Stiner. And he came from Georgia Southern. And he transformed that Georgia Southern team into a team that got bigger, stronger, faster. They performed better. They had much improved injury prevention. Like every aspect of Georgia Southern, the competitive toughness, the culture of Georgia Southern under I can't think of his name now, the head coach, Clay Helton, drastically improved from his predecessor because of the strength and conditioning program laid that foundation. And I think that with Clark Lea, when he set in motion a couple of these moves by bringing in Stiner, he set in, he's like, okay, now that I've made some moves that I think will benefit this program moving forward, we have to have a foundation because we can't really implement this until we get to spring practice. So we need something that's going to lay a foundation between now and then. He hires Coach Stiner, this new strength and conditioning program. I think the emphasis coming in was just bringing everybody together. It was such a toxic culture. Things were just bad throughout the whole 2023 season that they needed somebody that was just going to bring everybody together, have them compete, and have them have each other's backs. And he did just that. And he got them stronger, bigger, faster, all that stuff. And I think the injuries Also, knock on wood, weren't catastrophic for the most part. Now, some were, because it's football and it's a violent sport. But for the most part, you didn't have that rash of injuries like some programs have that it's either luck or your body's just not prepared. And if someone was going to get injured and injured badly, it wasn't going to be because they weren't prepared physically. It was generally those like freak situations where, you're blocking, you get rolled up on or something like that. So, but that's something that I think when you look at how the culture is built, how the foundation is built, I think the sense of competitive toughness, I think the sense of everyone having each other's backs is due to the foundation laid by Coach Stiner. And I think when Diego Pavia got here, I think he amped all that up. I think there was that sense of togetherness when he got here in the summer. And I think there was that sense of competitiveness during spring practice that Pavia just came in with his energy and boosted all of that like 10x, right? And so you get a guy with his leadership qualities in there, it's only going to boost whatever you have laid down. If they had a terrible culture when Pavia came in, it would have taken him a lot of work just to get everybody to square one to where they can be motivated and they can be thinking positively, but they were already there, and Pavia just boosted it to levels that allowed them to beat Virginia Tech when they shouldn't have, allowed them to beat Alabama when they shouldn't have, allowed them to take then top 10 Missouri to the brink when they really shouldn't have, winning on the road at Auburn when they shouldn't have, winning on the road at Kentucky, which that game could have gone either way, and then competing and being in the game against Texas, who is still in it for the national championship, and of course Tennessee, LSU, and South Carolina, just kind of being in those games, except for maybe the South Carolina game. That one got away from them. But it's just that sense of togetherness that I think that didn't exist since I don't know when. Maybe since James Franklin was last year. So there's a whole new culture that I really like to see within this football program that I think is going to continue. And on top of that paid off, right? All of that work, all of that competitiveness, all of those drills where they had to work together and have each other's backs, all of those things that they did in the offseason between January and spring practice, and then from the end of spring practice through the summer to fall camp, all of those things that they did, all of those times they competed together, they ran together, they did drills together, they competed against one another, fierce competition, and then, putting all that aside after the competition and saying, hey, listen, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, but we got to learn how to compete. And the only way to do it is to compete and compete fiercely. So in doing that built it in them to when the chips were stacked against them against Virginia Tech. They start surging, right? Vandy doesn't, that the team doesn't bat an eyelash. They just keep going right at Virginia Tech. They end up winning that game. Alabama surges. They keep going right at them. Missouri, they keep surging. They go right at them, right? And, they just keep on swinging. Now, the Georgia State game, I think it was an anomaly. That was probably one of those bring you back down to earth type games where it's still an immature team emotionally. And I don't think they really fully understood just kind of the magnitude of where they were. They were feeling really good after their first two games, and then they lay that egg there at Georgia State, and that really, that really set them back culturally wise. But also I think it was a good thing because it made them realize, hey, we can't just half-ass this thing. We have to put in a superstar effort to be able to get there. So those are some of the things that from 2024 I think are going to lay the foundations. On the next episode, we're going to take those things and turn them into New Year's resolutions, things that we have to see in 2025 to know that this was not a fluke. That's the thing that we're going to have to figure out. So Hoops did a similar thing. Baseball is a well-oiled machine. That's their mention. But Hoops did a similar thing. We'll talk about that next. All right, wrapping up the show here. Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure you follow the show at Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. Again, we're talking year in review. I would be remiss if I left out hoops. And 2024 was a year of major change for not only the football program, but for the basketball program as well. What we noticed with the basketball program is the standard. The standard is where the standard is. It's high. It's a high standard. They want to be able to be a competitive team within the SEC, make tournament appearances and things like that, and be able to compete at a high level. Unfortunately, under Jerry Stackhouse, that was not the case. They had some talent. They had some flashes of brilliance. They had some moments where you're thinking, okay, they're gonna do something, but then all of a sudden it comes crashing down, and then they just. I don't know what happened. I don't know where the breaking point was, but for Jerry Stackhouse, it just got to a point of diminishing returns, and you knew you weren't going to get any better under Jerry Stackhouse, no matter what you did. So the move was to let him go. And as a result, you literally cleaned house. The entire program was wiped away. Everyone hit the portal. You're searching for a new coach, and you find Mark Byington, which, we did a whole bunch of shows, and whether it was your first choice or second choice, I don't know what choice it was, but it was a good choice. It was a guy that could come over in a unique situation, a pretty bad situation. Vandy was in a bad way in basketball. They won 9 games all year. They were playing pitiful looking basketball. They didn't really have much of a team when they hired Mark Byington, because everyone had hit the portal, and what guys that were remaining were just waiting to see kind of how this would all shake out. They didn't like the direction that Mark Byington was going. They step out. So he quite literally brings in a whole new basketball team, right? Because 2023-24 season, you come out of 23, you're not very good. You're looking for some reprieve, and when you hit the new year, and what new year means conference schedule, and typically that gets a lot more difficult, especially in the SEC nowadays. And you look at that and say, okay, well, this is not good, and you could just tell that this team was cooked. So you bring in a whole new cast of characters, probably the most random assortment roster wise that I've ever seen. Guys from Cornell, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Michigan State, Boston College, guys of all shapes and sizes and Mark Byington labels them all as point guards, which I think is freaking hilarious. But I also think it's brilliant because of the way he plays. He calls it positionless basketball. And I've always maintained at Vandy, you have to have an identity, but that identity has to be unique. Right? You have to have something that sets you apart, that makes you different. And different's not always bad. Like football, Vandy had a very distinct identity. It was different. It was outside the box, and they had a successful season. 7-6, Birmingham Bowl. From where they were in 2023, that's a phenomenal turnaround. I wish they would go 12-0 every year, but that we got to be realistic too. All right, for basketball. They have an identity. They do something that's out of the box. They do something that is unique and something that I don't think a lot of people are ready for. And I think that's going to take the conference by storm. I think their run and gun style, it's very reminiscent of Nolan Richardson's 40 Minutes of Hell, that philosophy from Arkansas. And I think it's going to be a lot like that. Probably not as fast paced as that, but kind of a similar concept where guys are moving constantly and there's not really any positions, just guys moving around on the floor, creating opportunities and creating looks at the rim. And so you're gonna see a whole new brand of basketball. And I like what I've seen so far in the non-conference slate. They finished runner-up in one of their preseason tournaments. Their only losses to Drake. They have poured it on. There's some guys. Jason Edwards is going to be a star for this team. I think this, a lot of guys are going to follow suit. It's going to be interesting to see conference play wise what they bring to the table. I'm very, very intrigued by that, and we'll come up with some resolutions for them to make it again to where the conference slate was not a fluke, or the non-conference slate was not a fluke. They have to continue it into into conference play, and we'll figure out what that is on the next episode. But it's just been it's a whole new fun brand of basketball. I think it's going to accomplish the goal of getting fans back into Memorial. It's going to achieve the goal of getting recruits either from the portal or from high school interested again in Vanderbilt, and it's going to make Vanderbilt be more of a fixture in postseason play. The SEC is going to get a lot of teams in this year. Why can't Vandy be one of them? We'll go over reasons why they can, or if they don't accomplish these things, why they can't. So, but that's going to do it for me here. 2024 was a very pivotal year for Vanderbilt. Lots of moves that are made in 2024 that I think, and I truly believe that it will set in motion a vast change in culture and create a brand new Vandy. If the Lions can resurrect their identity in the NFL from perennial losers to now they're amongst the favorites to win the Super Bowl, and they did it in just 3 years. Why can't Vandy do that in the SEC? Why can't they make a turnaround? I don't know if they can make it to the magnitude of the Lions, but it'll be fun to find out if they can or not. And so this will be a fun year for Vandy sports, not just football, and we'll see kind of where that takes us in 2025 and beyond. So enjoy the last day of 2024. Hopefully you can make some goals for 2025, and may they all come true. One of my goals is to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm on the plus side of halfway, so just continue to subscribe. Make sure you meet me there. All right, that's going to do it. Anchor down. Peace out. Peace out to 2024. Welcome 2025. The next time you see me, it'll be 2025. We'll have some resolutions for you. Thank you. Peace.